we are talking about life changes. We've suffered a loss, a great musician and entertainer who was Prince and who mourns him now, his family, his fans, all of us, the whole music industry. Prince gave us music that defined an era for me. His music gave me feelings to explore and to celebrate, but ultimately, Miss Controversy examined this loss and realized my youth and feelings were wrapped up in the music of Prince. But as I grew up, so did Prince. His music changed, and even though he was recognized in his genius and his talents, but as a black man, this man in the music industry made ultimate and wonderful changes. I honor his accomplishments, but it's serious time for serious people. So we're going to check out Proverbs 8 when it says, "Wisdom calls out to us now. We all naive humans to listen and learn the path to success and happiness by replacing our ignorant thoughts and our way of thinking with God's wise principles." Wisdom concludes in Proverbs 8 verses 35 and 36, "For he who finds me finds life and obtains favor from the Lord. But he who sins against me injures himself. All those who hate me love death." Prince is at rest now, as we will all be in time. But you, dear listeners, are alive and you're listening to us on the Art McCoy University radio show. So what will you do to help? What will you do to help change things in your life or in your community? What would you do to influence others and help others to feel positively about themselves? Well, let's act now while you still have time. And that's what Miss Controversy has to say about that, Art. Well, that's unfortunate. And then, trying to break it down because everybody's kind of in shock. Everybody wants, the answers. Well, the coroner's report still hasn't been released. There was some other extenuating circumstances. It could have been flu related. It could have been something else. But examining the causes of his death really doesn't make a difference now. We know that the cremation ceremony took place on Saturday. So this is a fact. This great artist, this icon, is no longer with us. That's the fact.
Well. Though the haters,
oh boy,
the first thing the haters will want to say, and that's why we brought up this flu thing, because that was the initial report. But the haters, the first thing they would want to say is drugs. That's what the haters would say. That's why the conversation came up, and even
the AIDS medicine.
Huh? You got to talk in that microphone.
The AIDS medicine.
Yeah, yes, all of that. You understand? But I'm just, that's why the whole conversation come up. It's not really a conversation.
But would it make a difference explaining in the manner that he died? Does it make a difference about his life legacy? You know what that's like? That's like, you lived all your life doing all good and all right for everybody. And then at the moment of your death, when they go in your closet and they find them high heel shoes that you like, and then they say, oh, he must have liked high heel shoes. And then that attitude changes everything. Does that detract about what your legacy and your life accomplishments were? What you did on a personal level? No.
Miss Controversy, Miss Controversy, I'm glad you brought that subject up.
Okay.
Because back in the day...
Did you wear high heels?
Let me finish.
I know you did, because you're short.
Let me finish.
Right.
Listen.
You dressed like Prince, didn't you?
Listen.
You had a process. I know you did.
Listen.
Back
in the day...
Yes.
Back in the day...
Yes.
I'm talking about spike heels.
Oh, yes.
Back in the day...
You could wear them, too, couldn't you?
Listen to me.
Yes, brother.
Back in the day, that would have been shunned on and unacceptable. But the times have changed so much these days till if I had some high heel shoes in my closet, it's truly acceptable. So what I'm saying to you is the world has really changed.
Yes, the world has changed.
What I'm trying to say, it ain't no big thing no more. It's a big thing to me, but right. it really ain't no big thing.
No, it's okay.
To where because we got a special guest in the house.
I see.
And Lord have mercy, I finally got her back in the studio, and what makes it so special is that this young lady is really a radio, TV personality all wrapped up in one, but she just don't want to admit it. So listen, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come right back. It's amazing that all the power and all the music and richness that Prince had, that he didn't have a will.
Yeah.
He didn't have a living will.
He didn't have a plan.
And so you know, Miss Controversy, that somewhere down the line there's going to be some battling going on.
Oh, yeah.
About that. And so I'm sure that Marcellus Boyd Cox have an opinion about that.
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, thank you so much to Mr. McCoy and Miss Controversy for allowing me to be on the show today. And yes, I know Mr. McCoy mentioned to me about Prince's will, and I'm very unfortunate, Judge, is it not? It's very unfortunate that Prince didn't have a will, and from what I have heard and what I have read, that he just didn't trust anybody to give him the paperwork, and he would sign off on the paperwork. When you don't have a will, you don't particularly trust what's going to happen with your assets, so you just don't do anything. And unfortunately, that was not the best decision, because what the burden is going to put on his family, and now they're in the process of determining who his rightful heirs are. I know he has a sister, but I heard this morning there is talk of some other extended relatives from deceased relatives, like deceased siblings he might have had, and so if the deceased, he had like a brother I heard was deceased, so that means that his child would be entitled to any assets. So it's going to be very really something, and it's going to be very costly. Unfortunately, when you go to the court and you have to make the court decide who gets what, it's not going to be easy, and it's going to be a lot of hurt feelings, I'm sure.
So Marcellus, before we go to the news, taking that right from Prince and putting it right down into our neighborhoods.
Yes, yeah.
You would recommend what to people?
Oh, I don't care how much or how little you feel you have. A lot of times people feel, I don't have enough to write a will. That's not true. If you whatever assets you have, and if you don't want to turn it over to the state necessarily, so you want to dictate who receives what in the event, when in the unlikely event something happens to you. I mean, you can even have a spouse. You need to have a will written that if the two of you get killed at the same time, or if you die back to back, or you need to have things written like that so that you can dictate who receives your assets, right, Judge?
That's correct.
Yeah, because it can just be very costly, and then there's so much confusion. It just can set up so much hurt and controversy, and just a whole lot of chaos in the family that you could avert, you could get around if you just write it out. I don't care if you've got just your own little property, your home, your furniture, whatever. Doesn't have to be just money. It's any assets that you own who you want to pass on to any relatives after you die.
So Marcellus, in the business that you're in, you really can give us an insight into how to avoid this, the business that you're in,
Well, I always suggest that you sit down with relatives and talk to them about what your choices are for yourself. When you pass, not just your physical, not just your assets, but what are my choices for when I pass? How is my body to be, how are my final rights to be held? What are my choices? Because the average person doesn't know. I don't care how close you feel you are to them. You could have lived with somebody for 10 years, 20 years, or more. At the end of the day, they may not really know what your particular choices are for your final disposition, how you want to be celebrated. So it's a hard conversation, and they call it like the talk of a lifetime, but you really need to get it out on the table.
Was that Ella Mae passed away. And so Ella Mae's family was over to Miss Ella Mae's house. Or they thought Miss Ella Mae had a lot, but they realized that she didn't have a whole lot. That all she had left, because she had been a little sick and stuff. She's, doctor's bill took all her money. So they realized at the end that all she had was this china cabinet. with dishes and spoons and stuff like that. You know how seniors do. And do you know that that family, them girls and boys, brother, they got to fighting over that china cabinet because they realized that that was all she had left. And hey, the dishes and plates, they probably weren't that much, but it just shows how people fight when someone passed away. And so they got to fight. Oh, this is mine. She left me this plate, and she left me this, and this. And you know what happened? They got to fighting over that china cabinet and start throwing plates and breaking plates all around. If only Miss Ella had something in writing, maybe it would have saved her family. They was fighting over nothing because she didn't have nothing. They even broke the final plates that Miss Ella had in her china cabinet for so long. Could you have helped Miss Ella Marcellus Boyd Cox?
Well, I'm not an attorney.
No, I don't mean that. I mean, as far what
you giving them advice?
If she had came to you, this is all dealing with the funeral home, okay?
Right.
If she had came to you, what would you have did for her?
Now, when you speaking of as far as in relation to the china cabinet, right?
No, I'm not. I'm speaking of how could she have avoided the family fighting over her stuff. If she, in other words, in the end, and it's a true story, in the end, they didn't even know how they was going to bury Ella May. You could have helped her with this, couldn't you?
Of course. And you always want to make provisions. Now, first of all, and just in preparation for
that's what I'm talking about, preparation.
And trying to sit down and have that conversation. And even for some of those who, some of us who, some who are older and, are in an unfortunate situation like you're saying, she didn't have the insurance or she didn't have the assets set aside. Now, somebody, and a lot of times people will set aside money in a bank account or even under a mattress. There's usually some asset somewhere. That's what I find at some point. Or the family can bond together and pull something together. But speaking to what you were saying about how the family had the argument over her assets, what I am hearing, a lot of times people argue over what we think are very small, insignificant items, but they really point to a larger issue in a family. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
So people will go off on what seems to be inconsequential, unimportant, very minute, but they're using that. First of all, when people are grieving, they are angry a lot of times. And the anger and the frustration is vented on some of the most unlikely things. And so, but there may be issues behind that in the family that are driving that argument. Are you understanding? Does that make sense?
I sure am. So
a lot of times, even though you think they're arguing over this materialistic stuff, it's some deep emotional issues that are going on behind that. Whether it's the relationships in the family, or one person was closer to that family than another, that person, never got a chance to express their relationship with that person. There's usually a lot of other things going on. But yes, you should always make some type of preparations. In the case of Miss Ella, you need to always encourage her or other families to be prepared. Have some kind of funds set aside.